Commander Ara stood in the command center of Colony, watching the tactical display with growing dread. The red markers representing the Marauder fleet moved steadily closer to their position. Her four arms worked the control panels with practiced efficiency, but no amount of skill could change the simple math staring back at her. The colony had 12 defensive platforms, 400 security personnel, and maybe 72 hours before the enemy arrived. They were bringing 3 capital ships and enough fighters to darken their sky. "How many civilians?" she asked her second officer. 42,000, Commander. 12 different species. We have families here, children, research scientists who have never held a weapon. Ara's head crest flattened against her skull, a sign of stress among her people. She had fought pirates before. She had defended stations and colonies across council space for 20 years, but they were different. They didn't just raid for supplies or take prisoners for ransom. They conquered. They enslaved. 3 colonies had fallen to them in the past 4 months, and the stories from the survivors made even hardened warriors feel sick. Ambassador entered the command center, his scaled face showing no emotion. The diplomat had been stationed at for 5 years, overseeing trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Now he looked at the tactical display and made a low hissing sound. "The council has received your distress call," said. "They are assembling a relief force." "How long?" Ara asked, though she already knew the answer would disappoint her. 14 days, perhaps 12 if they push their engines hard. "They will be here in 3. His inner eyelids closed briefly. "The council is stretched thin. There are conflicts in the outer reaches, pirate activity near the trade lanes, border disputes that require peacekeeping forces. Every ship, every soldier is committed elsewhere." Ara wanted to throw something. She wanted to scream. Instead, she took a deep breath and steadied herself. "Then we fight alone." "Perhaps not." A new voice spoke from the doorway. Captain Jake walked into the command center with his usual calm stride. The human liaison officer had been stationed at for 8 months, representing Earth's interests in the mining operations. He was tall by human standards, with dark hair starting to show gray at the temples. His uniform was simple and practical, nothing like the decorated dress uniforms worn by other species' military representatives. "Captain," Ara said, "unless Earth has a battle fleet hiding nearby, I don't see how your people can help." Jake smiled slightly. "We don't have a fleet in this sector, but I've sent a request through secure channels to my government." I explained the situation and the timeline. And asked, his tone skeptical, "What did they say?" "They said help would arrive within 48 hours. The command center went silent. Ara stared at the human, trying to determine if this was some kind of joke. "Captain, the nearest human military base is 6 days away at maximum speed. There are no human ships in this region. Are you saying your people can somehow cross 6 days of space in 2? "I'm saying they acknowledged the request and confirmed a 48-hour response time," Jake said calmly. "That's what the message said." Made that hissing sound again. "Captain, I respect your people. Humanity has been a valued addition to the Galactic Council, but please do not give false hope to these people. It is cruel." "I'm not giving false hope. I'm relaying information from my chain of command." Ara studied the human's face. He didn't look like he was lying. He didn't look worried or uncertain. He looked patient, like someone waiting for something he knew was coming. "What exactly did you request?" she asked. I explained we had a civilian population under imminent threat from a superior hostile force. I provided enemy numbers, expected arrival time, and our defensive capabilities. I requested immediate assistance. And they promised to send help in 2 days. "Yes, a fleet." They didn't specify. They just confirmed the timeline and said to expect arrival within the window I provided. Lieutenant Kate appeared behind Jake, carrying a data pad. She was younger than the captain, with red hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had arrived at the colony 6 months ago as part of the Human Intelligence Liaison Program. "Commander, we're detecting increased communication traffic. They're coordinating their approach vectors." Ara turned back to the tactical display. The enemy fleet had split into 3 groups, positioning themselves to attack from multiple angles. It was a standard siege formation, designed to overwhelm defenses by forcing them to divide their attention. "They know we're weak," she said quietly. "They always go after weak targets," Kate said. "That's their pattern. They've attacked 7 colonies in the past year. Each one had minimal defenses or was waiting for reinforcements that arrived too late." "And this time?" asked. Kate glanced at Jake before answering. "This time might be different." The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Ara organized the civilian population into evacuation tiers, prioritized defensive positions, and ran constant drills with her security forces. Every hour, she checked her communications panel, hoping to see some sign of the Council fleet arriving early or the delaying their attack. Neither happened. Jake spent most of his time in a secure communication room, sending and receiving encrypted messages. Kate coordinated with the colony's intelligence network, tracking every movement of the approaching enemy fleet. The other human civilians on the colony, mostly mining engineers and their families, asked questions about evacuation procedures and emergency protocols. No one mentioned reinforcements. 60 hours after Jake's initial message, a sensor technician called out from his station. "Commander, we have a contact. Single ship, small profile, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system." Ara's heart jumped. "Council ship." "No identification beacon. Configuration doesn't match any Council military vessel in our database. Wait, it's broadcasting a human identification code." Jake stood up from where he had been studying a tactical map. "That's them." "Them?" Ara pulled up the sensor data. The ship was tiny compared to military transports. It looked more like a cargo hauler than anything else. "Captain, that vessel couldn't carry more than a dozen people. Are you telling me this is your government's response to a military crisis?" "I'm telling you that ship contains exactly what we need." Moved closer to the display, his scales rippling with agitation. "This is an insult. Your people send a single small transport while 42,000 lives hang in the balance." "The ship is moving fast," the sensor technician said. "It's already halfway here. Arrival in 6 hours." Kate checked her data pad and nodded to Jake. "Confirmed. Everything is on schedule." Ara felt her temper rising. She had hoped for cruisers, for fighter squadrons, for battalions of Marines. Instead, humanity had sent what looked like a glorified cargo shuttle. "Captain, I appreciate that your government responded, but unless that ship is carrying some kind of super weapon, I fail to see how it changes our situation." Jake met her eyes, and for the first time since the crisis began, she saw something sharp in his expression. Something that reminded her that humans, for all their friendly cooperation and trade agreements, were still predators from a death world. "Commander," he said quietly, "that ship doesn't carry a weapon. It carries 6 people, and those 6 people are going to save this colony." Ara opened her mouth to respond, but the sensor alarms cut her off. The fleet had accelerated. They were coming in fast, pushing their engines hard. The attack would begin in less than 4 days instead of the projected 5. The small human transport continued its approach, unaware or unconcerned by the massive enemy fleet converging on the same destination. Inside the command center, Ara prepared for a battle she wasn't sure they could win, while Jake waited with the patience of someone who had seen miracles before. The human transport docked at Bay 7 exactly on schedule. Ara stood at the airlock with Ambassador and a dozen security officers, expecting to see soldiers in power armor or at least a proper military unit. Instead, 6 people in plain black tactical gear walked down the ramp like they were arriving for a routine job. The first one off the ship was a man of average height with brown hair and calm gray eyes. He carried a rifle that Aura didn't recognize, along with equipment packs that looked well used but carefully maintained. He walked directly to her and extended his hand in the human greeting gesture. "Commander Aura, I'm Sergeant Mitchell. This is my team." Aura shook his hand automatically, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. "Your team. Sergeant, where are the rest of your forces?" "This is everyone, ma'am. 6 is our standard operational unit." 6. Aura looked past him at the others. A woman with dark hair checking a communication device. A stocky man inspecting some kind of scanning equipment. Another woman carrying a long rifle case. 2 more men offloading gear from the transport. "Captain said you would save this colony. I assumed he meant an actual military force." His expression didn't change. "We are an actual military force, Commander. We're just not the kind you're used to." A woman stepped forward, her hands moving across a data pad. "I'm Corporal Lisa, Communications Specialist. I'll need access to your network infrastructure and transmission arrays. Also, they are using frequency-hopping encryption on their command channels. I can crack it, but I'll need 8 hours of uninterrupted workspace." Made a choking sound. "You can crack military encryption. Their systems are considered some of the most secure in the galaxy." Lisa looked at him with mild interest. "They use a rotating key system based on stellar positioning. It's actually not that complicated once you map their reference points. I broke into a similar system during the station incident." Another man walked up, this one carrying equipment cases marked with symbols Aura didn't recognize. He had an easy smile and moved with the relaxed confidence of someone comfortable with danger. "Alex Martinez, Commander. I handle demolitions and tactical preparations. I'm going to need complete colony schematics, including power distribution, structural support points, and any underground maintenance access." "Why would you need that information?" Aura asked, feeling more confused by the moment. "Because when they land, they're going to think they control the battlefield. I need to make sure the battlefield has other ideas." A woman with sharp eyes and precise movements approached last. She carried her rifle case like it was a musical instrument, with careful respect. "Parker, I'll need elevated positions with clear sight lines to your perimeter. Also, any locations with unexpected angles or concealed access points." "You're a sniper," Aura said. "Yes, ma'am." "One sniper against 300 warriors." "I won't be fighting all of them at once, Commander. That would be inefficient." Step back into the conversation. "Commander, I understand this isn't what you expected, but we need to get started. They will be here in less than 70 hours and we have a lot of work to do. We'll need full access to colony systems, current defensive positions, civilian evacuation protocols, and anything you know about assault tactics." Aura wanted to argue. She wanted to demand that Earth send real help, but something in the way these 6 humans carried themselves stopped her. They weren't nervous. They weren't worried. They moved like professionals who had done this before and knew exactly what they were doing. "Very well," she said finally. "Lieutenant, provide them with the access codes and schematics they requested." "Thank you, Commander," said. "We'll brief you on our operational plan once we've completed our initial assessment." The team dispersed immediately, each member heading in a different direction with clear purpose. Lisa went straight to the communications center with Kate. Alex started studying the colony blueprints on his data pad, disappeared toward the upper levels, already mapping shooting positions in her mind. Watched them go, then turned to Aura. "This is madness. 6 people cannot defend a colony against an assault force." "I know," Aura said quietly, "but they're what we have." For the next 18 hours, the human team worked with focused intensity. Lisa established something she called a secure network overlay that apparently made their communications invisible to enemy scanning. Alex moved through the colony's maintenance tunnels like he had built them himself, placing equipment packages at locations he marked on his personal map. Identified 73 defensive positions, including several that the colony's own security force hadn't known existed. Two men Ara hadn't been introduced to yet worked on different aspects of the operation. One, introduced as Chris Anderson, studied the colony's close-quarters environments, the tight corridors and small rooms where fighting would be personal and brutal. The other, Johnson, set up electronic warfare equipment that he claimed would disrupt sensors and communications. They spoke little. When they did talk, it was in short, efficient phrases that conveyed maximum information with minimum words. They moved through the colony like shadows, always aware of their surroundings, always checking corners and exits. The alien security personnel started to feel uncomfortable around them, though no one could explain exactly why. Jake found Ara in the command center at hour 20 of the team's arrival. "How are they doing?" "I don't know," she admitted. "They won't explain their plan, they just keep preparing." That's normal for them. They don't do big briefings or elaborate strategies. They assess, adapt, and execute. "Who are they, Captain, really?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "They're specialists. The kind of people my government calls when conventional military force isn't the answer. Each one has been in situations most soldiers never see. They've operated in hostile territory with no support, completed missions that other units said were impossible, and survived things that should have killed them." "They're spies." "No, they're something harder to define. Elite special operations. The people who go into the worst places and do the jobs no one else can do." Ara looked at the tactical display, where the fleet continued its steady approach. "And you think 6 of them can stop 300? I think 300 are about to learn why humanity doesn't need large armies." The fleet arrived 12 hours ahead of their projected schedule. Commander led the assault force personally, eager to add another conquered colony to his record. His warriors were experienced raiders who had crushed resistance on a dozen worlds. They came in hard and fast, their landing craft dropping through the atmosphere like falling hammers. In the command center, alarms screamed. Ara coordinated her security forces, positioning them according to their training and the defensive plans she had refined over 20 years of military service. 300 warriors against 400 defenders should have been manageable, except they were better equipped, better trained, and had the advantage of momentum. Mitchell stood beside her, watching the tactical display with calm attention. His team had gathered in the command center, each one checking their equipment one final time. They looked ready, but Ara still couldn't shake the feeling that 6 people against 300 was suicide. "Commander," said quietly, "when we leave this room, you won't see us again until the operation is complete. Your security forces should hold defensive positions and protect civilians. Don't try to coordinate with us or track our movements. Just trust that we're working." "How will I know what you're doing?" "You'll know because we'll start losing." Lisa looked up from her communication device and nodded too. "Enemy command network is mapped. I have their frequency patterns and command structure identified. Jamming systems are ready." Alex checked his detonator controls. "Charges are set. All trigger mechanisms confirmed." Adjusted her rifle sling. "Positions are marked. Range cards are complete." Chris cracked his knuckles once, a nervous habit he seemed barely aware of. "Close quarters routes are clear." Nodded to each of them, then turned to Ara. "Thank you for your cooperation, Commander. Defend your people. We'll handle the—" Then they were gone. 6 humans walking out of the command center and disappearing into the colony like they had never existed. Ara stared at the door they had used, then back at the tactical display where 300 enemy warriors were establishing their perimeter. Kate remained behind, watching the displays with Jake. "You should tell her," she said quietly. Jake shook his head. "She'll understand soon enough. Let's team do their work." The warriors spread through the outer sections of the colony, moving with the confidence of a superior force. They had done this before. They knew how colonies fell, how defenders broke, how resistance crumbled. Commander watched his forces deploy and felt satisfied. This would be quick. Then Parker took her first shot from a position no one had thought to check, and everything changed. The forward commander was organizing his troops when his head exploded. The sound of the shot came half a second later, echoing through the colony's metal corridors in a way that made it impossible to locate the source. His warriors froze, scanning for threats but saw nothing. No muzzle flash, no shooter, just their commander's body and the spreading pool of blood. Parker was already moving. She had taken the shot from a maintenance catwalk nobody knew about, a position she had found during her initial survey. By the time they started looking, she was 3 corridors away, climbing through an access shaft toward her next position. She had 17 more shots planned for the next hour, each one carefully chosen, each one designed to create maximum confusion. Commander received the report in his command ship and felt his first twinge of concern. 1 shot, 1 kill. That suggested either incredible luck or exceptional skill. He ordered his second-in-command to take over the ground operation and implement security protocols. The warriors spread out more, moved more carefully, started checking corners and elevated positions. That was when they started disappearing. The first squad to vanish was a 4-warrior patrol checking the colony's eastern sector. They entered a maintenance corridor and never reported back. When a second squad went to investigate, they found no bodies, no blood, no sign of struggle. Just 4 empty positions and abandoned equipment. Chris Anderson watched the search party from inside a ventilation shaft. He had taken the first patrol in close quarters combat, moving through them like a ghost. Each warrior went down silently, grabbed from behind or struck from blind angles they hadn't known to watch. He had dragged their bodies into a storage room and locked the door. No traces, no evidence, just the creeping fear that something was hunting them. Lisa sat in a hidden corner of the communications center, her equipment tapped directly into the command network. She listened to their chatter, hearing the confusion in their voices as squad after squad reported strange sensor readings or lost contact with other units. She fed real-time intelligence too, who coordinated the team's movements with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. Unit 7 is moving toward the water treatment facility, Lisa said into her encrypted comm. 4 warriors, standard weapons, looking nervous. I see them, replied from somewhere in the colony's lower levels. Alex, you ready at treatment? Charges are set, Alex's voice came back. Waiting on your mark. The 4 entered the water treatment facility, weapons raised. They had been ordered to secure all critical infrastructure. The facility was quiet, full of humming machinery and the sound of flowing water. They spread out, checking rooms and corridors, following their training. Alex Martinez waited until they were in the center of the facility, then triggered the charges he had placed hours earlier. The explosions weren't meant to kill, they were meant to isolate. Support beams collapsed in carefully calculated positions, sealing exits and trapping the inside. The warriors tried to radio for help, but Johnson's jamming equipment kicked in, drowning their communications in white noise. They're contained, Alex reported, moving to next position. Ara watched her command center displays with growing amazement. The force was 300 strong, heavily armed and experienced, but their formation was breaking apart. Squads were getting cut off from each other. Communication networks were failing in specific zones. Warriors were dying or disappearing, and nobody could explain how. What are they doing? She asked Jake, who stood beside her with that same calm expression. Asymmetric warfare, he said. They're not trying to fight 300. They're fighting small groups, creating chaos, and using the colony's environment as a weapon. 6 people should not be able to do this. 6 normal people couldn't, but's team isn't normal. Another squad reported contact, then went silent. Ara pulled up the security camera feed for that sector and saw nothing but empty corridors. They had been there, the timestamp confirmed it, but now they were gone. Parker had taken 2 of them from a ceiling access point nobody had thought to secure. Chris had taken the other 3 in rapid close-quarters combat that lasted less than 10 seconds. They moved like water, flowing through the colony's infrastructure, appearing where the enemy didn't expect and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Commander paced on his command ship's bridge, listening to the radio chatter with increasing anger. His warriors were elite troops. They had conquered colonies defended by thousands. Yet somehow, in this small mining outpost, they were being picked apart. "How many have we lost?" he demanded. His tactical officer checked the display. 43 confirmed casualties or missing. Another 67 have been isolated in various sections of the colony. Communications are failing across multiple zones. The defenders are using some kind of electronic warfare we haven't encountered before. 43 in 2 hours, felt his scales bristle. What about the colonial security forces? They're holding defensive positions around civilian areas. They haven't engaged our forces directly. All our casualties appear to be coming from a smaller, more mobile enemy. "The humans," said quietly. "The intelligence report mentioned human presence on this colony." "Yes, sir. A small diplomatic and mining contingent. Maybe 200 civilians and a handful of military liaisons." Access the tactical display studying the pattern of attacks. They were too coordinated, too precise. This wasn't panicked defenders. This was organized, professional military action. "Get me information on human combat capabilities. Everything we have." Johnson sat in a small equipment room, surrounded by electronic warfare gear that would have made most military signals officers jealous. He had mapped the entire communication network, identified their command frequencies, and was now systematically jamming or spoofing their signals. When squads called for backup, he made sure the backup went to the wrong locations. When commanders tried to coordinate their forces, he introduced delays that made timing impossible. "I'm reading a priority communication going back to their command ship," he reported to. "They're requesting orbital support." "Can you block it?" "Already did, but they'll try again and eventually one will get through." "How long can you give us?" "Maybe 2 more hours before they switch to backup systems." "That's enough, keep them confused." The psychological impact on the warriors was devastating. They were used to fighting enemies they could see, armies that held positions and exchanged fire. This was different. This was being hunted. Every corridor could hide an enemy. Every room could be a trap. The colony's infrastructure seemed to work against them, with doors locking unexpectedly, lights failing at critical moments, and systems behaving in ways that didn't make sense. A squad leader tried to rally his troops in a cargo bay, gathering 15 warriors for a coordinated push toward the civilian sectors. They were checking their weapons when took the shot. The squad leader dropped, then the warrior beside him, then a third. 3 shots in 4 seconds from a position they couldn't locate. The remaining warriors scattered, their formation broken, their confidence shattered. Chris Anderson appeared in the chaos, moving through the confused like a shadow. He took down 2 more before they even knew he was there. The survivors ran, abandoning their equipment, desperate to escape the cargo bay and whatever ghost was hunting them. Ara received a communication request from Commander. She accepted, curious to hear what the leader would say. His face appeared on her screen, scales darkened with anger. "Commander Ara, I am offering you one chance to surrender. Call off whatever forces you have deployed and I will spare the civilian population." "I'm not the one losing warriors, Commander," Ara said calmly. "Perhaps you should consider surrendering to me. You have killed 47 of my warriors. When I discover how you're doing this, I will show no mercy." 47, Ara checked her own tactical display. He was right. The casualties were mounting faster than she had realized. "I think you're fighting above your weight, Commander. This is your last warning. Surrender now, or I will order orbital bombardment of your entire colony." The connection cut off. Ara looked at Jake, concerned for the first time since the battle began. He's serious. He'll kill everyone, his own troops included, just to eliminate the threat. He won't, Jake said confidently. Anticipated this. Alex, you ready? Alex's voice came through the comm system. The landing craft are rigged. If tries orbital bombardment, his own ships will have some serious technical problems. Ara stared at Jake. You sabotaged their ships. Alex did during the first hour of the attack. He has a gift for placing explosives in places people don't think to check. Another hour passed. The force, which had landed with overwhelming confidence, was now fractured and demoralized. Warriors huddled in defended positions, afraid to move. Command structure had broken down. Squads refused to accept orders that would send them into areas where their comrades had disappeared. Some had started trying to retreat to their landing craft, only to find the routes blocked or too dangerous to traverse. Mitchell stood in the shadows of a power distribution center, watching a group of 20 trying to coordinate a final push. They were scared now. He could see it in how they moved, how they checked every corner 3 times, how they jumped at every sound. Good soldiers broken by an enemy they couldn't understand or counter. He tapped his comm. Lisa, open a channel to the command frequency. You're live, she replied. Spoke in clear trade language, his words carrying across every channel the enemy was using. Commander, your ground force is defeated. You have 2 choices. Order your warriors to surrender and we will treat them according to galactic warfare conventions. Or we continue this operation until none of them remain. You have 5 minutes to decide. In the command ship, listened to the transmission with fury and fear warring in his chest. 5 minutes to surrender to an enemy he had never seen, who had dismantled his elite force like they were training recruits. He looked at his tactical officer, who simply shook his head. We can't win this, the officer said quietly. Whatever they have down there, it's beyond our capability to counter. His communicator chimed. 3 more squads reporting casualties, 2 more requesting emergency extraction. The ground operation was a complete disaster. He thought about orbital bombardment, about destroying the colony and everyone on it. But something in that calm human voice suggested that even that option had been anticipated and countered. These weren't desperate defenders. These were professionals who had controlled the entire battle from the first moment. Made his decision. Commander Ara sat in her office with Jake and Ambassador, trying to process what had just happened. Through the window, she could see warriors surrendering in small groups, laying down their weapons under the watchful eyes of colonial security forces. The battle that should have destroyed the colony had ended in complete defeat for the attackers. Explain this to me, Ara said quietly. Who are they really? Jake leaned back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. The people I requested are part of Earth's Special Operations Forces, not regular military, not even elite infantry. They're specialists who operate in small teams for missions that conventional forces can't handle. 6 people destroyed a force of 300, said, his voice still carrying disbelief. That should not be possible. It's possible when those 6 people represent decades of training and experience. Mitchell has been doing this kind of work for 16 years. He's operated in hostile territory on 11 different worlds, always with minimal support, always against superior numbers. Parker is one of the best snipers in human space. She can hit targets at ranges most species don't believe exist. Chris Anderson has survived close-quarters combat in situations where any normal soldier would have died. Ara thought about the cold efficiency she had witnessed. They're killers. They're soldiers, Jake corrected gently. There's a difference. They don't enjoy violence. They're just exceptionally skilled at applying it when necessary. How many of these teams does Earth have? Jake smiled slightly. That information is classified, but enough. When humanity needs surgical precision instead of overwhelming force, We call people like team. They go where others can't, do what others won't, and accomplish missions that look impossible on paper. A soft knock on the door interrupted them. Mitchell entered with Lisa and Parker. They had cleaned up since the battle ended, though their tactical gear still showed signs of hard use. They looked tired but satisfied, like workers finishing a difficult job well done. "Commander," said with a slight nod, "we've completed our operational debrief. The prisoners are secured and receiving medical attention. No colonial casualties beyond minor injuries during the initial landing. All hostile assets have been accounted for." "You did this without losing a single civilian," Ara said. "Without any help from my security forces." "Your security forces did their job protecting the civilian population. That allowed us to do ours." Pulled up a data pad. "We're documenting everything for your official report. Enemy casualties, tactical assessments, captured equipment." Lisa cracked their communication encryption, so you'll have access to their entire command network data. Lisa stepped forward, offering her own data pad. "I've also compiled information on tactical patterns and command structure. This should help Council forces counter future attacks. Their encryption isn't as sophisticated as they think." Took the data pad, scanning the information with growing amazement. "This is comprehensive. You gathered all this during the battle." "It's what I do, Ambassador. Communications intelligence is my specialty. I've been doing it for 12 years, on 17 different operations. The systems are actually less complex than some I've encountered." Ara studied the three humans standing before her. They didn't look like legendary warriors. Could have been a mining engineer. Lisa might have worked in any corporate office. Had mentioned during her initial arrival that she coached children's sports back home. They looked normal, which somehow made their capabilities more disturbing. "Why didn't Earth send forces like you to previous conflicts?" Ara asked. "The Council has been fighting pirates and border disputes for years. Teams like yours could have ended those conflicts quickly." "Because teams like ours are for specific situations," said. "Large-scale warfare, fleet actions, planetary defense, those need conventional military forces. But when you have a small population under imminent threat and no time for traditional deployment, that's when you call us. We're the option you use when speed and precision matter more than overwhelming force." The door opened again, and Alex Martinez entered, followed by Chris Anderson, Johnson, and two more people Ara hadn't seen much during the battle. A woman with medical insignia on her gear, and a man who had apparently been coordinating from a secondary command post. "Everyone's here," said. "Commander, you should meet the full team. Brooks, our medical specialist." Nodded, her hand still showing traces of medical gel. "I've been treating wounded for the past 3 hours. They're scared and confused, but they'll recover. We don't let prisoners suffer, regardless of what they did." "Tyler Watts," the man said. "I handle tactical coordination. I was in secondary command helping manage our electronic warfare operations and keeping track of enemy movements. My job is making sure everyone's where they need to be when they need to be there." Ara noticed that Tyler moved with a slight limp. "You're injured." "Old injury from a mission 5 years ago doesn't slow me down much," he smiled. "Each of us brings different skills, leads and coordinates, handles long-range precision work. Chris is our close quarters expert. Alex manages demolitions and tactical preparation. Lisa handles communications and intelligence, keeps us healthy and treats anyone who needs it, disrupts enemy systems. I make sure all the pieces work together. 6 people, but we function like a much larger force." "You've worked together for a long time," Ara observed. 4 years as a unit, confirmed. "But we've all worked similar operations with different teams before that. We train constantly. We study every new technology, every tactical development, every lesson from previous missions. Being the best means never stopping learning." Ambassador set down the data pad Lisa had given him. "I need to contact the Council. Admiral should know what happened here. He's already en route, Jake said. He should arrive in about 6 hours with the reinforcements the Council promised. He'll arrive to find the crisis already resolved, Ara said, by 6 humans who arrived in a transport ship. 7, Kate said, entering the office behind the team. I was here coordinating intelligence before they arrived, though I'm just support staff compared to these people. Shook his head. Kate's a skilled intelligence officer. She provided the initial assessment that helped us plan our approach. This operation worked because everyone did their part. Over the next few hours, as the adrenaline faded and the reality set in, Ara watched the human team interact with the colony's population. They answered questions about Earth and their training. They helped medical staff treat both colonial defenders and prisoners. They took time to speak with young aliens who were curious about these strange humans who had saved their homes. Parker sat with a group of children explaining in simple terms how she had learned to shoot. Practice, she said with a gentle smile. Lots of practice and patience. Being a good shot isn't about being aggressive. It's about being calm and focused. Do you like fighting? A young child asked. His expression became serious. No, I don't like fighting, I like protecting people. I have 3 children back home about your age. I do this job so they can grow up safe, so all children can grow up safe. Alex Martinez demonstrated some of his non-lethal equipment to curious engineers, explaining how he calculated blast patterns and structural stress points. It's mostly math and physics, he said. Understanding how buildings work, how materials respond to force, how to create specific effects without causing unnecessary damage. You could have killed all the easily, one engineer observed. Killing is easy, Alex said quietly. Winning without unnecessary death is harder. That's what makes us good at our jobs. We use the minimum force needed to achieve our objectives. Commander was brought to the command center under guard. He expected to be interrogated harshly, maybe tortured. Instead, he found Mitchell waiting with a calm expression and a cup of what looked like earth tea. Sit down, Commander said. We need to discuss what happens next. Sat warily. You defeated my force. I am your prisoner. You are, but you're also a soldier who was following orders. The Galactic Council will want to question you about operations. You'll be treated according to galactic warfare conventions. Your wounded are receiving medical care. Your dead will be returned to your people with appropriate respect. Why? Asked. We came to conquer your colony. We would have killed or enslaved everyone here. You would have tried, corrected, but you failed. What you did or intended to do doesn't change how we treat prisoners. We're professionals. We don't take revenge. We don't torture. We don't mistreat people in our custody. That's what separates soldiers from murderers. Studied the human across from him. I have fought many species, conquered many worlds. I have never encountered forces like yours. You encountered a small team doing a specific job. Earth has conventional military forces too. Fleets, armies, all the standard elements. But sometimes the situation calls for something different. You just happen to meet the specialists. How many teams like yours does Earth have? Smiled slightly. Enough. Now tell me about command structure. The Council needs to understand your organization if they're going to negotiate a peace treaty. Admiral arrived with 3 Council cruisers and 2,000 Marines prepared for a desperate rescue operation. Instead, he found a secure colony, defeated invaders, and detailed intelligence reports waiting for his review. The Admiral was a veteran of 30 years, experienced with military operations across Council space. But even he had never seen a crisis resolved so completely with so few personnel. Ara gave him a complete briefing, showing security footage of the battle and explaining how his team had systematically dismantled a superior force. Watched the recordings with growing respect and concern. These are not ordinary soldiers, he said finally. No, Admiral. There's something Earth calls Special Operations Forces, elite specialists trained for impossible missions. Turn to Jake. How many of these teams can Earth deploy? That's classified information, Admiral. But I can tell you that Earth takes the protection of its interests and allies very seriously. We may not have the largest fleet in Council space, but we have capabilities that others don't. I need to include this in my report to the Council. We understand. The information about our special operations capabilities was going to come out eventually. Better that it comes out because we use them to save allies rather than in some other context. Nodded slowly. The Council will want to establish protocols for coordinating with these forces in future crises. Earth is open to those discussions, Jake said. We value our place in the Galactic Council. We're happy to contribute our unique capabilities to collective security. As the Admiral departed to coordinate with his fleet, Ara found and his team preparing to leave. They packed their gear with the same quiet efficiency they had shown throughout the operation. "You're leaving already?" she asked. "Mission's complete," said. "They are secured, your security is restored. The Council reinforcements are here, we're no longer needed. The colony wants to honor you. There's talk of medals, ceremonies, recognition." Shook his head. "That's not necessary, Commander. We did our job, that's enough. Most soldiers would want recognition for what you accomplished. Most soldiers do different work than we do. Recognition means attention. Attention means people know our faces, our names, our capabilities. That makes future operations harder. We prefer to work quietly." Ara understood, but it still seemed wrong. "At least let us thank you properly." Smiled. "You already did. You gave us access to your facilities, trusted us to do our jobs, and treated us with respect. That's all the thanks we need." The team boarded their transport, the same unmarked vessel that had brought them. As the ship prepared for departure, Ara watched from the command center with a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. They weren't the strongest species. They didn't have the most advanced technology. But they had people like Mitchell's team, quiet professionals who could accomplish the impossible and then return home like they had done nothing special at all. The transport lifted off, disappearing into the dark between the stars, carrying 6 legends who would never seek the fame they deserved. The transport ship carried Mitchell's team through hyperspace toward Earth, the journey giving them time to decompress after the operation. They sat in the small crew compartment, cleaning weapons, writing reports, and enjoying the quiet that came after action. These were the moments that reminded them they were human, not the legends others might make them out to be. Parker video called her family, smiling as her 3 children argued over who got to tell her about their school week. "Mom, I scored 2 goals in soccer," her youngest announced proudly. "That's wonderful, sweetie. Did you remember to pass to your teammates like we practiced?" "Yes, Coach said I'm getting better at team play." Watch talk to her kids, the contrast striking between the precise sniper who had controlled the colony's perimeter and the patient mother asking about homework and friend drama. When the call ended, caught his look and smiled. "What?" "Nothing. Just thinking about how the aliens would react if they knew you coach children's soccer." "Why would that surprise them?" "Because they saw you take shots that most species would consider impossible. They don't expect that person to go home and organize bake sales for school fundraisers." Shrugged. "Being good at my job doesn't mean I'm not a normal person. My kids don't need a warrior. They need a mom who shows up to their games and helps with their homework." Chris Anderson was writing an email to his sister, telling her about the mission in vague terms. "Another job done," he typed. "Help some people who needed it. Should be home in 3 days. Want to grab dinner." Simple words that concealed the complexity of what he had done, the warriors he had faced in close-quarters combat, the lives he had saved through violence. Alex Martinez studied technical manuals for new demolition equipment, always learning, always preparing for the next mission. They're developing shaped charges that can cut through composite armor, he said to Johnson. Might be useful for future operations. Looked up from his own equipment catalog. I'm more interested in this new jamming system. Quantum encrypted signals are getting harder to disrupt. We need to stay ahead of the technology curve. Always studying, Brooks observed from where she was organizing her medical supplies. You two never stop preparing. That's why we're good at what we do, said. The day we stop learning is the day we become vulnerable. Tyler Watts finished his operational report, documenting everything that had happened at Colony for future reference. Every mission generated lessons, insights that could help the next team facing similar situations. He noted what had worked, what could have been done better, and recommendations for future operations. Do you think the Council will change how they view humanity? Lisa asked, looking up from her own report. Probably, Tyler said, but not in the way most people expect. They won't suddenly fear us or treat us as a military threat. They'll just understand that we bring different capabilities to the table, that we can solve problems in ways they haven't considered. Is that good or bad? It's just reality. Every species has strengths. Ours happens to be producing individuals who can operate effectively in small teams under extreme conditions. They have incredible strategic planning abilities. They have diplomatic skills we can't match. They have engineering that surpasses ours in many ways. We all contribute something unique. Lisa smiled. That's a very balanced perspective. I've been doing this work for 14 years, Tyler said. I've learned that arrogance gets you killed. Respect for other species' abilities keeps you alive and makes you better at your job. The ship dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, the blue and white planet growing larger as they approached. For the team, it meant returning to normal life, to families and friends who knew they did important work but didn't understand the details. Classified operations meant keeping secrets from the people they loved, explaining absences with vague statements about training exercises or diplomatic duties. Had been married once. The constant deployments, the inability to explain where he went or what he did, had slowly eroded the relationship until his wife decided she wanted a partner who could actually be present. They had divorced amicably 5 years ago and had accepted that his work came with personal costs. Some people were meant for different lives. But he had built a family with his team. These 6 people understood him in ways civilians never could. They shared experiences that couldn't be explained to others. When Chris woke up from nightmares about missions that had gone wrong, knew exactly what to say because he had the same dreams. When struggled with the guilt of taking lives, even enemy lives, was there to help her process those feelings in healthy ways. They landed at a military facility outside Washington, a secure base where special operations forces came and went without attention. No ceremonies waited for them. No medals or public recognition. Just a standard debriefing with their commanding officer, Colonel Sarah Martinez, who reviewed their reports and asked pointed questions about their tactical decisions. The commander confirmed you offered terms before engaging, the colonel said. That's good practice. Always give enemies a chance to surrender before inflicting casualties. He chose to attack, said. We responded appropriately. The council is impressed. Admiral sent a formal communication praising your team's professionalism and effectiveness. He's requesting more information about our special operations capabilities. What did you tell him? That we discuss it through proper diplomatic channels. Earth isn't ready to reveal the full extent of our special operations forces. Better to let them wonder than to give away operational security. The colonel stood, signaling the debriefing was over. Good work take 2 weeks leave. Spend time with your families, decompress. We'll have new assignments waiting when you return. The team dispersed, heading to their separate homes and lives. Drove to her house in suburban Virginia, where her children tackled her with hugs and her husband, a high school teacher, welcomed her back with patient understanding. Chris returned to his apartment in Seattle, planning to spend his leave hiking in the mountains and visiting his sister's family. Alex went home to Texas, where he helped his father run a small construction business that had no idea their demolition expert had skills far beyond normal building work. Lisa traveled to California, where her parents ran a restaurant in San Francisco. She would work in the kitchen for 2 weeks, helping prepare food and talking with customers, enjoying the normalcy of civilian life. Went to his cabin in Montana, where he would fish and read and enjoy the quiet away from electronic systems and communications networks. Returned to her family in Colorado, where she worked part-time at a local hospital when not deployed. The doctors and nurses she worked with knew she had military training, but they didn't know the extent of her experience treating combat wounds in hostile territory. To them, she was just a skilled emergency room physician who sometimes took extended trips for government work. Tyler went home to his wife and 2 teenage daughters in North Carolina. His daughters were used to their father's absences, though they never quite understood why he couldn't explain where he went. His wife, a former military officer herself, understood better but still worried every time he deployed. He would spend his leave attending his daughter's school events, helping with homework, and trying to be the father they deserved. Mitchell went to his small house in rural Virginia, where he lived alone with a dog named Scout. He would spend his leave running, reading, and maintaining his property. Some people found his solitary life sad but was content. He had his team, his work, and the satisfaction of knowing he made a difference. 3 days after their return, received a message from Jake, still stationed at Colony. The Council Security Committee wants to know how many teams like yours Earth maintains. What should I tell them? Smiled as he typed his response. Tell them we have enough. Let them wonder about the specifics. The truth was more complex. Earth maintained 17 teams similar to us, each specialized for different types of operations. Some focused on hostage rescue, others on reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Some specialized in counterterrorism or sabotage or psychological operations. Together, they represented less than 200 personnel, but those 200 could accomplish missions that conventional forces measured in thousands could not. They operated quietly, living normal lives between deployments, carrying skills that would shock anyone who knew them casually. The woman who taught elementary school had extraction and evasion training that made her nearly impossible to capture. The man who worked as a librarian could hack military-grade encryption systems. The couple who ran a coffee shop were both combat medics who had saved lives in the worst conditions imaginable. Earth's strategy was different from other Council species. The maintained massive standing armies. The built enormous fleets. The focused on diplomatic corps and intelligence services. Humanity did all of these things but also invested heavily in creating small, highly trained units that could operate independently with minimal support. It was a strategy born from Earth's history, from centuries of special operations forces proving that a few skilled individuals could accomplish what large armies could not. From special forces rescuing hostages, to teams sabotaging enemy infrastructure, to operators gathering intelligence behind enemy lines, humanity had learned that quality sometimes mattered more than quantity. The Galactic Council would eventually learn this truth. They would see more teams like deployed in crisis situations. They would come to understand that when humanity offered help, the help might come in unexpected forms. They would learn to respect the quiet professionals who arrived without fanfare and departed without seeking glory. But they would never know the full extent of Earth's capabilities. They would never know exactly how many teams existed, how they trained, or what their full capabilities were. That mystery, that uncertainty, was itself a strategic advantage. Commander Ara included a recommendation in her official report that humanity be granted advanced security partnership status with the Council. The humans possess unique capabilities that could benefit Council security operations. she wrote. Their special operations forces demonstrate exceptional skill, professionalism, and ethical conduct. I recommend establishing formal protocols for coordinating with these forces in future crisis situations. The recommendation worked its way through council bureaucracy, generating discussions and debates about humanity's role in galactic security. Some species worried about Earth becoming too powerful. Others saw the value in having allies with unconventional capabilities. The debates would continue for months. Meanwhile, life continued. Mitchell coached a youth sports team in his spare time, teaching children about teamwork and discipline. Parker organized her kids' carpools and attended parent-teacher conferences. Chris Anderson helped his sister renovate her house. Alex Martinez taught a weekend class on construction safety at a community college. They were legends who didn't seek legend status, warriors who went home to normal lives, professionals who served quietly because the work mattered more than the recognition. And somewhere in the galaxy, another colony would face another crisis. Another desperate call would go out for help, and Earth would respond by sending a small team of specialists who would arrive without fanfare, accomplish the impossible, and return home like they had done nothing special at all. Because that was what they did. That was who they were. Silent legends who served without glory, protected without praise, and made the galaxy safe for one mission at a time. Sat on his porch that evening, Scout lying at his feet, watching the sunset over the Virginia hills. His phone buzzed with a message from the colonel. New mission briefing in 10 days. Hostage situation in the outer reaches. Are you and your team available? He thought about his team, scattered across the country, enjoying their leave and their families. He thought about the hostages who needed help, the people whose lives hung in the balance. He thought about the work that needed doing and the rare few who could do it. Typed his response, "We'll be ready." The sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Scout stretched and yawned. Somewhere in the galaxy, people lived and worked and raised their families, unaware of the quiet professionals who stood ready to protect them. And that was exactly how it should be. The legends remained silent, as legends sometimes must, serving a purpose greater than glory, answering a calling deeper than fame. They were humanity's hidden edge, the answer to impossible questions, the solution to unsolvable problems. They were 6 people who became a force of nature when needed, then returned to being human when the work was done. And Earth had many more just like them, living quietly among the ordinary, waiting for the call that would ask them to be extraordinary once again.